What treasures that we 100% know existed still haven't been found? The tomb of the first Qin Emperor of China exists and we know exactly where it is. The only part of the site that's been extensively excavated for artifacts is the famous Terracotta Army. The main tomb itself is still completely sealed and no attempts have been made to open it since legend states that it was filled not only with mountains of treasure inside, but also mechanically operated rivers of flowing mercury made to resemble the major rivers and bodies of water in China and booby traps to protect the massive subterranean complex, which has been measured to be around 14th the size of the Forbidden City using ground-penetrating radar and other non-invasive techniques. Apparently, archaeologists and scientists have found disturbingly high levels of mercury in the ground around the tomb, giving some air of legitimacy to the legends, which also raises concerns about the legend of booby traps. There's also concern that we do not currently have the technology and knowledge to protect artifacts we'd excavate from outside air and contamination, just like how earlier excavations of the Terracotta Army led to their original colorful paint being destroyed shortly after being unearthed. Edit. Since this comment got so popular, I'll add on the Heirloom Seal of the Realm, also known as the Imperial Seal of China. Physical possession of the object basically legitimized a claim to the mandate of heaven and thus rule over China. It was created in 221 BC, passing along through various emperors and factions until sometime between around 1500 to 1000 years ago. There's several theories on how, when, and where it was lost, but we'll probably never get an answer unless some farmer happens to stumble on a fairly big square hunk of intricately carved jade in some field and realizes what it is. Also, here's a wiki page to lose a few hours browsing through. Yeah, but we have lasers now. Surely they can do something with lasers. We also have sharks. Perhaps we can somehow put the lasers on the sharks somehow? I'll fund this. The shipwreck of Flor de la Mar, sunk with the equivalent of $2 billion in today's money. This one and the treasure fleet are the only ones that seem super plausible to me, because ocean. You know, of all the lost treasures that I learned about from that book my 7-year-old bought at the Scholastic Book Fair a few months back, I can still smell the Scholastic's book fair 25 years later. It was a magical time most Americans have experienced. Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger was one of my hauls. I had so many Goosebumps books that I never once read. Much like Pokemon cards, I just had to have to be cool but never knew what to do with them at all. Portrait of a Young Man by Raphael. Missing since the end of WW2 signs point to it having been sold for traveling money by Nazi Hans Frank. I'm convinced that the majority of missing artwork from WW2 is held by private collectors. Like that missing Picasso painting that just happened to be spotted in the living room of the former First Lady of the Philippines. The 1715 Spanish treasure fleet wreck will almost certainly never be 100% recovered, meaning there's still some out there. Bombshell your therapist dropped in one of your sessions company with a fleet of underwater drones and researchers find treasure ships banked by private investment partnerships. Deep Ocean Search recovered tens of tons of silver coins from City of Cairo, the deepest ocean treasure recovery, and turned it over to the UK government to get their salvage share. www. Deepoceanciarc.com Project Steamship City of Cairo. There are some amazing Spanish treasure wrecks, but their government says they are warships and the gold and silver they took from native peoples and enslaved to extract more is government property. So professional treasure hunters are not focusing on finding those is government property. I think they forgot about the international legal tradition of finders keepers. Is this the one they talk about in Florida Man? I remember seeing a National Geographic that says there's Spanish gold basically all over the seafloor between the Keys and Florida mainland. It's just not cost effective to get a single coin out of 50 meters of water, so the profitable locations are kept secret. I went to college beside that museum in Boston that got robbed. They never found the thieves or the paintings. The famous Gardner Museum theft. No one knows what happened to the paintings still. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum was one of the largest art heists ever. There was a really good Netflix documentary on it a few years back. Tomb of Alexander the Great, Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Funny thing is, they are all probably buried in Alexandria beneath the modern city. I saw a documentary recently where an archaeologist was looking for his tomb and dug in a park in Alexandria, finding a bust is Alexander buried very deep and further collapsed caverns. But those caverns are under blocks of flats and loads of development, so I've no idea if they'll ever be able to explore them. My wife is from Alexandria. Her grandfather was an archaeologist there who used to tell her about the constant struggle between excavations and city building. The whole area is an ancient site, literally built over the old city, by ancient sites, so they quickly built over everything because if they discovered something they wouldn't be able to. A lot of bribes and looking the other way or there would be no modern city there. Crazy. King Richard's tomb was found under a parking lot in England. The tomb of Alexander used to be a huge tourist attraction with multiple people describing it in antiquity. Yet somehow everyone just forgot where it was. The missing Faberge eggs. There are about 7 still missing, and only an old black and white photo remains of some of them, along with their descriptions. King John's crown jewels. Lost while crossing the Wash on the east coast of England. Over 800 years ago. The Three Brothers. An absolutely beautiful set of jewels that simply vanished from record, which is very surprising as they are beautiful and large. Anyone check the British Museum out the back? You never know. This one really isn't talked about as much as it should. In 1996, billionaire couple Marvin and Kay Lichtman, who collected tons upon tons of priceless items, art, chess sets, Faberge eggs, etc., were murdered by a glass installer that they hired. Before burning the house down, the glass installer made off with as much of the couple's riches as he could haul away. Shortly after, he tried to flee to avoid prosecution, and before he was caught, 3 men involved with the salvage operation at the scene were arrested for peddling items that were salvaged and they stole. Most of the Lichtman's collection, including the items stolen by the glass installer who murdered them, have never been found. About 83% of the cash is from Byron Praise. The Secret. Tomb of Genghis Khan. I recently read a biography of Khan called Genghis Khan and the Creation of the Modern World. In it, the authors conclude that, most likely, he didn't have a tomb, as others here have said. What he did have was his spirit banner, which was held as a treasured artifact by the Mongolian peoples. Whether or not it truly belonged to him, I'll leave to experts. It was seized by the Soviets during the invasion of Mongolia in the 1920s, and disappeared. Likely, IMO, destroyed by the Soviets in an attempt to quell resistance there. Likely. But not definitively. I heard a theory that he didn't have an actual tomb, they just left his body somewhere to be eaten. The enormous golden menorah from the Second Temple. The Romans took it after sacking Jerusalem. Some people think it's being hidden by the Vatican, but I think more likely it was melted down and will never be found. The burial site of Genghis Khan is still unknown. It was not documented on purpose and it worked pretty well. Not document on purpose is the kind way to say they killed everyone who worked on it. And then killed the executioners? $190 million worth of Bitcoin on a hard drive in a particular landfill. I'll even go a step further. 1.1 million Bitcoin are sitting in their creator's, Satoshi's, wallet, untouched. No one knows who he is or if he's even alive. I want to clarify that one more time. Not $1 million worth of Bitcoin, 1.1 million Bitcoin. That's $48,334,539,000.